Sakura Matou. Sakura Matou, Matou Sakura, is one of three main heroines of Fate/Stay Night and the true Master of Rider in 5th Holy Grail War. She is also the Master of Avenger, Saber Altar, and the Blackened Berserker in the Heavens Feel route. Sakura is the younger, adopted sister of Shinji Matou and biological sister of Rin Tosaka. She has a long-standing and obvious crush on Shiro Amiya, who sees her as family. After Shiro's confrontation with Shinji, Sakura would often visit Shiro's home to help him with his daily chores. Born as Sakura Tosaka, Tosaka Sakura, she is the biological younger sister of Rin Tosaka and daughter of Tokiomi Tosaka and Aoi Zenju. Like most magi, her father chose only one daughter to carry on his family's tradition as he believed raising an additional child would introduce competition. Zoken Matou, an ancient ally of the Tosaka house, offered to adopt Sakura with the intention of training her as the successor of the Matou's magecraft as his own heir. Shinji was incapable of sorcery. As a result of her natural abilities, Zoken sought to use Sakura as one of his future vessels, empowered by the Engra. Having to endure the cruel training under Zoken and Byakuya, Sakura became an empty and emotionless shell resigned to her fate. When Kariya Matou, Sakura's adopted uncle and her mother's childhood friend, learned of Zoken's intentions, Kariya attempted to win the 4th Holy Grail War in hopes of liberating her. Unfortunately, Kariya died in his attempt and Sakura was unable to understand Kariya's motivation for trying to rescue her. His death demoralizes her, and she convinces herself that she should not attempt to fight against Zoken. After gathering the tainted fragments of the Shattered Grail from that war, Zoken hybridized the collected black ichor with several of his crestworm familiars. He implanted these parasitic worms into Sakura's body, which drain her mana but feed on her carnal impulses. Sometime later, Sakura met her new brother Shinji, who was studying abroad at the time of the 4th Holy Grail War, when he returned to the Matou house. Though he later came to love and accept his new sister, he bullied her. This ended the day Shinji found out that Sakura had become the heir to the Matou family instead of him, and he became harsh with her, just like everyone else in the Matou house. Because Sakura was apologetic and expressed pity toward him, Shinji took that as Sakura submitting herself to him since she displayed no emotion. Sometime after the death of Byakuya, Shinji began raping her. Although castigated and humiliated on a daily basis, Sakura maintained her bearings with great stoicism. For the 11 years after her adoption, Sakura grew to resent Zoken for his cruelty, Tokiomi for sending her away, and finally Rin, for never coming to save her. However, she still kept the ribbon Rin gave her. Sakura drew her strength to endure such hardships from Shiro, whom she admired for his dedication. The inspiration she found came from watching him persistently attempt to jump a bar during a track and field practice session. She joined the archery club in order to be closer to Shiro, watching him from afar. 2 years before the events of Fate/Stay Night, after Shiro was injured in an accident, Sakura gathered enough courage to approach and help him. She has visited him ever since to assist with daily activities. Appearance. Sakura is a young girl with a soothing smile and long, lustrous violet hair, which she styles with a red-pink ribbon on the left side, and violet eyes. The ribbon she wears in her hair was given to her by Rin when they were children and is the first ribbon Rin ever made. Physically, Sakura is described as having a, secretly, dynamite body, and noted to have very large breasts, with Taiga revealing she is an E-cup and had grown 13 centimeters since last year in an attempt to tease Shiro. During school, she wears the standard Hamurahara uniform. Her casual clothing consists of a pink cardigan, a white top, and a long cream-colored skirt. In Ufotable's movie adaptation of Heaven's Feel, Sakura is seen wearing a long white dress with short sleeves and a black sash, and white sandals. She sometimes wears a pink cardigan or puffer jacket over top. Before Sakura was adopted into the Matou family, she resembled her sister, having had short black-brown hair with pigtails and teal eyes. Shortly after her adoption, at most a year after, her hair and eyes took on their violet color, which is a direct result of Zoken's torturous training changing Sakura's body. Her Renaissance outfit is a purple dress, purple socks, and black Mary Jane shoes. Personality. While Sakura is outwardly shy, soft-spoken and eager to please, she possesses a great inner strength. As noted by Shiro, she can also be openly stubborn at times. However, she is also prone to feelings of resentment towards others. Despite the cruelty she endures living with the Matou family, she is given a brief reprieve in Korea, her adoptive uncle and the only person who genuinely loved her. When he dies in the 4th Holy Grail War, Sakura mistakes Korea's last attempt to free her from the Matou house as a warning from Zoken as the fate of those who disobey him. The incident cements Sakura's despair and resignation towards her own suffering. However, her own resolve is strengthened after she falls in love with Shiro Amiya and becomes closer to him by helping him with domestic tasks to express how she cares about him. During Fate/Stay Night, she begins to feel isolated when she believes that Shiro is beyond her reach. Her strong feelings for Shiro are the most evident throughout the series compared to the other heroines, and are the main reason as to how they had little friction in desiring each other. Her inferiority complex makes her believe she is not fit for him, but after being chosen by Shiro as a love interest, her feelings for him also come with strong jealousy whenever he compliments or spends time with other women, because she doesn't want to lose him. Prior to the strengthened influence of the crest worms inside her, which amplified her arousal, she would express either dismay or anger towards Shiro when he would bring up other women in conversations, and in her low self-esteem, she would misunderstand his words towards other women as confessions of attraction instead of platonic liking, such as when Shiro admits that Ryder is beautiful while explaining his thoughts about her. Her jealousy sometimes comes out in other roots, but has been a recurring theme in her own root, as being chosen by Shiro makes her mental fortitude unstable. Abilities. Sakura was born with great potential and rare natural talent, considered to be a miracle equal to that of Rin with even the same OD level as her. It surpasses the norm of natural talent, or inborn skill, possessed by others, and due to that she would be in danger without the protection of a Magi house, can be equated to a curse in a way. She was given to the Matou house to act as their heir for this reason, but Zoken did not intend to use her for that purpose. For the purpose of acclimatization, she has to undergo constant torture in the basement of the Matou household. The way they pass on their magecraft is not a study, but constant, lifelong torture due to Zoken's preference. Taught to the body rather than the mind, she is forced through immense pain and stress constantly for her education. The changes are so extensive as to change her hair color, eye color, and every cell in her body so that they no longer reflect her Tosaka heritage. While having greater potential than Kariya or Byakuya, she is more suited to the Tosaka magecraft. She was born lacking an elemental affinity of the 5 great elements, and instead had an imaginary element of imaginary numbers, or hollow, as her affinity, thaumaturgical attribute and origin. Her element was changed to the water alignment with her acclimation to the Matou magecraft, so she cannot display her true talent. Her attribute is one specializing in dealing with spirits, and her element is highly effective against those made of mysteries like spiritual beings, but is not quite as potent against with physical bodies. However, when imbued with the power of Ingramenu, this weakness is overcome and her power can greatly affect physical creatures like humans, whether it be to devour them for energy or trap them in shadowy pocket dimension made of imaginary number space with no concept of time or space. Her crest worms will feed on any excess magical energy she circulates before she can use a spell, leaving her unable to even cast any in most cases. Due to them devouring it on a constant basis, even Rin is unable to tell that her sister is an actively practicing magus. Without expecting anything from her intelligence, Zoken sought to turn her into a tool that uses magecraft. With such little formal education, she is unused to combat and cannot normally match someone of Rin's caliber, losing 10 out of 10 times without being able to breach Rin's barrier. Rin compares her to a bird with the potential of flight being placed in water, forced to die or adapt as best it can. While she would have had great success as a Tosaka magus, her current state is much like that of the untrained Shiro, only worse due to her lack of physical training. Under duress, she can cast a spell using the Matou, absorption, nature magecraft, and it shoots like a spear, stabbing and entangling the part hit to drain the person of energy. She says that it has little practical use compared to something like reinforcement that has many different uses in that it is limited to stealing away from others and feeding on their pain. Magic Crest. The magic crest of the Matou family is in the form of Zoken's crest worms, forcefully implanted into her as part of her acclimatization process. They have grown within her for 11 years, turning into a nerve that has entangled throughout her entire body like a magic circuit. It is suspended under normal circumstances without having an effect on her body, but it will attack her nerves and use her energy to roam throughout her body while taking even more if it activates. Left for half a day, they will drain her body of energy and consume her flesh as nutrition. As with any magic crest, it is painful containing a foreign substance in her body, but even more so with it entangling her nerves with its own and moving about. Compared to the pain experienced in Rin's arm, she compares Sakura to a cluster of magic circuits that violates her function as a human being and should overwrite her mind with a wave of energy. Normally only an observation device for Zoken, its usage can be activated by her lust, which in turn causes her to lust even more as the worms in her blood become an aphrodisiac. It can be forcefully activated with an aphrodisiac given to Shinji or just through her normal feelings for Shiro. As they devour her energy, she becomes more lustful and is forced to seek out supplemental energy, semen in the original story and blood in Realta Nua. Zoken should be able to incite the worms into action as he pleases, making it a priority to stay away from him. As his main body has been changed to a small worm next to her heart, that is actually impossible. As they are so integrated into her nerves and magic circuits, it is impossible to remove them normally, even for Zoken. Kirai Kodomine uses a large number of command spells to remove most of it, but he cannot remove the ones metabolized with her nerves without removing her heart. Its original usage is not meant as a means to kill her, but the conditions of the Fifth War provide a unique opportunity. Imposed on her to make sure she participates in some capacity, they will activate if she breaks a certain condition, abandoning the war as a master. Entrusting Rider to Shinji falls under the condition, but it will torture her should she refuse to battle while having Rider's contract. Even forcefully removing her contract with a command spell would cause her to be instantly consumed. With the added burden of managing Rider's upkeep, it is difficult for her and could lead to it devouring her. It is set to last for the duration of the Holy Grail War, and will spread further with each day. Kirai's surgery is able to reduce her overall pain somewhat, but she is still plagued by the same overall problem. Black Grail. At some point after the Fourth Holy Grail War, Zoken managed to collect fragments of the destroyed Grail and implanted them into Sakura's body, transforming her into an incomplete Lesser Grail. Sakura has been developed to be able to act as the Black Grail, Kuro no Seihai, a second Lesser Grail, by Zoken Matou. Though the ritual of the Fourth Holy Grail War ended in failure with the destruction of the Holy Grail, it had briefly been completed. It would normally be painful to have the inorganic substance of the Grail within a human body, so he turned the shards into a living thing to allow her to still function as a human. Combining them into crest worms, he placed them into her body. Zoken lacked the skill of the Einsburns and completed an eighth of the process in his own way, so she is in an incomplete state. The shards corroded and assimilated her magic circuits over the 10-year period between the Fourth and Fifth Grail Wars, leaving her with only her crest worms as her only way of using magic if she even did. She has the ability to function like the Einsburn Lesser Grail, Iliasville von Einsburn, in acting as a container for the souls of the heroic spirits and becoming the gate upon the ritual's completion. Zoken originally has no plans for her to be utilized fully in that state during the Fifth Holy Grail War, but instead as an experiment in acting as Makiri's Holy Grail that is able to live as a human and contain the function to collect souls. The purpose of changing her is mostly as a way for eventually reaching his goals, slowly developing her into something like the Holy Grail over several decades. While it would be impossible for her to go into that state in other routes, the conditions within the Heaven's Feel route allow for her to become active. Only when being chosen by Shiro Amiya, the person she does not wish to lose, do her bottled-up negative emotions come to the forefront to accelerate Avengers' growth. Previously thought of as only an unadaptable Holy Grail, she shows surprising growth and talent in being able to retain her senses after eventually taking in a number of servants. He equates her to a true Holy Grail on the same level as the Einsburns, even though he had thought it impossible. Servants that come into contact with the shadow from the Grail are greatly affected. They cannot oppose it, rotting them anywhere it touches. They lose feeling in the affected areas as they become that which does not exist in the world. Proper heroic spirits are extremely affected, going as far as losing consciousness on contact, while servants close to it in nature, while not fully affected, will have their energy drained from touching it. Those taken in and not digested are blackened, changing their mentality as they are corrupted by its malignant influence and considerably augmenting offensive power. While she can take in and blacken most servants, Gilgamesh is unable to be controlled, so she must digest him in haste to keep him from tearing her up from the inside. Converted to magical energy, he provides enough to accelerate the development of the Grail even without enough servants. Though he is difficult to digest, the large amount causes her to buckle like a broken dam due to previously being able to only barely maintain herself. Differing when he escaped from the Grail mud in the Fourth Holy Grail War cut off from the main body, that of Sakura, the shadow, is connected to the body of Avenger itself. Servants are unable to resist her, having become the Grail itself, and even being incarnated is not enough as long as one is materialized under the Grail system. As with the Einsburn Holy Grail, the container cannot retain full human function while taking in souls of heroic spirits and receiving the powers of the Holy Grail. Her body loses function as the amount of energy she contains from the souls increases, and the overflow from the great swirl of magic of the Holy Grail is too much for her mind to withstand. It causes her to break down until becoming Dark Sakura, first showing an overall loss of feeling in her extremities and the state of recent memories becoming vague. Forms and alternate versions. Black Shadow. With the development of Sakura as the Holy Grail, the Black Shadow, Kurwakage, begins to manifest around Fuyuki. It is the contents of the Grail, Ngramenu, leaking out from the other side when Sakura is unable to properly shut the gate even as a complete Holy Grail. It is a cursed boundary layer, Sakura's shadow, or even Sakura herself, normally controlled below her threshold of awareness. While it seems that it works with Zoken, he cannot communicate with it, and he can only arrange its path to keep it from running wild. Though he is able to calm it nightly to keep the damage to a minimum, he eventually becomes unable to handle it as Sakura develops. It devours magical energy at first, only leaving people unconscious. More ruthless in its feeding than Castor, it eats their magical energy along with their minds. It eventually realizes that eating them fully is more efficient, taking hundreds of people from 50 households in one feeding. Rather than smashing them, it only needs to swallow them, body and soul. It is an unidentified object that gives the impression of a jellyfish on land or a deep-sea monster. Its presence dominates all who look upon it, seeming to distort space around it. It lacks eyes, limbs, or a body, but still casts a shadow at its base. It looks insubstantial, as if a shadow were to stand with so light an existence that it looks able to simply be blown away. As the Holy Grail's shadow, it should not normally have form or a will, but passing through the gate, Sakura, it takes her form, borrows her sealed ID, and obtains a body to come into the world. It is a Holy Grail with a will, seeking out human souls to complete itself. It will swallow all it sees, especially clumps of magical energy like Ilia. It should be possible to stop by stopping Sakura, as it is born from her unconsciousness. It hates whoever Sakura hates, so it will keep them from coming near her. It is impervious to all conventional attacks, and its targets can only await death in its presence. Shiro is unable to tell if the concept of death can even be applied to it. As a cluster of curses, its touch is highly corrosive due to containing Ngramenu's property of all the world's evil, dissolving organic matter and converting the base elements into pure magical energy. It can lash out with tentacles, bring forth a shadow giant, and spread out for 10 meters to swallow everything like a wave of water, touching them with all the world's evil that burns skin like coal, cuts off their life, and shows them its horrors. It takes in energy just by existing, turning plant life black, and automatically leeching it from those without any resistance. It can absorb the energy in an area in order to swell up and explode. It tramples over everything upon exploding and spreading the collected energy out like a storm, swallowing its prey instantly. It can overwhelm all heroic spirits no matter their strength so long as they are summoned under the servant system, filling even the mindless berserker with the instinct to run away. Spreading its mud over the ground like a swamp, servants engulfed by it are restrained down by countless tentacles and swallowed. It easily tears through Lancer's rune barrier, capable of blocking great noble phantasms. It dislikes organic material, passing through that which is not alive and digesting that which is alive. Taking them in instantly, the cursed boundary layer is a bounded field of dissolution much stronger and more instantaneous than even Blood Fort Andromeda. Growing by the day to feed even more, it swallows an area of 50 meters at once, and then goes on to act as a tidal wave that passes through all things to take its victims without causing a bit of collateral damage. It is not detectable because it is not a specially activated spell, but its regular actions even if it is extremely powerful. Connected to Sakura, she can initially only feel slight after-effects from its feedings, but later begins to have uncontrollable visions of it acting. Both its smell and the presence behind it remind Shiro of her, and she feels an intimacy with it, something without an evil mind that, while similar to her, just eats in a different way. She becomes more in tune with it as the war progresses, eventually coming to the point where she is the one wandering the town at night. It begins to originate from her as her affinity with it develops, feeling its hunger as her own and allowing her to swallow Gilgamesh. It begins to stretch out on its own, allowing her to hear and see through it directly. After becoming Dark Sakura, the command spell around her body has the same makeup as the shadow. Dark Sakura. After Sakura rejects Zoken's control and regains her central consciousness, she becomes Dark Sakura, Kuro Sakura, a rancorous and psychotic distortion of her normal self. It would normally be that she would either have exploded from the strain of being the Grail or have had her consciousness disappear and be overtaken by the shadow. Due to her affinity with it, she is able to take control of it. Touching Ngramenu, the mud of the Grail, contaminates a person's personality and reverses it towards the orientation of evil. Her reasoning and emotions are severely impaired, and she is indiscriminately destructive to everything around her. she is one capable of using the power of the mud as part of her own power due to the contamination. Appearance. Her appearance changes when she becomes Dark Sakura. Her hair turns white, and her eyes turn red, but she retains her trademark ribbon. She wears a long black dress made of black ribbons, that are trimmed in red. The length of the dress and the length of the ribbons it is composed of vary. In this form, her face, dress and legs are covered in red markings. Personality. When she becomes Dark Sakura under the influence of Ingramainu, her personality changes drastically. She becomes a devilish, evil, cruel, and extremely violent person. Sometimes she talks about herself in the third person. This personality occasionally shows itself during the events of Fate/Hollow Ataraxia but is less violent and acts more as comedic effect. Abilities. As she develops, she becomes a threat to humanity that could potentially have required or eventually gotten to the point of needing intervention from the counter-force. Even with this overwhelming strength, being unused to battle and her unstable mental state makes planning against her possible. Using souls as a perpetual motion machine to create magical energy, Rin calls her a poor imitation of the third magic. Connected to the other side of the Grail, she has a stock of magical energy that cannot be used in a lifetime, effectively making it infinite. Despite that, she can only use the full capacity of her magic circuit to instantaneously release 1,000 at a time. Against the Jeweled Sword, Rin is able to release the same amount to match the shadows, making it a battle of Sakura's limitless magical energy and Rin's infinite magical energy. With the same properties as the shadow, she is capable of forming tentacle appendages from her body. She can spontaneously regenerate, allowing her to recover from mortal wounds within minutes of receiving them. Even before fully developing, she survives being impaled by the Gate of Babylon, having everything below her stomach severed, with only severed nerves being the issue the next day. She can support a number of servants without issue in this state, and Saber can use the energy-intensive Excalibur without limit. After the contract to Avenger is broken at the end of Heaven's Feel, she is still connected to the other side of the Grail. As an after-effect of the contract, she remains a Holy Grail. While Avenger still exists before Shiro destroys the Greater Grail, it could potentially make her its master again due to the connection. Vast amounts of energy are collected in her body, and she must periodically release it. She is able to use it to keep up Rider's existence even without support from the Grail, and the excess left after that is given to Shiro to help him maintain his body. She learns Magecraft from Kiriai's successor and Rider, and her abilities as the Holy Grail, even only in part, are a large boon to her life as a Magus. Shadow Giants. The Shadow Giants, Kage no Kaioshin, are familiars made out of her hollow element. Under normal circumstances they are extremely small, but when her powers are augmented by Ingramainu and the Holy Grail, their size increases vastly and they start acting as a materialized curse. Each composed of roughly 1,000 units of magical energy, they are called a match for the noble phantasms of servants. She can bring them forth without limit, and the amount of energy spent creating them for just a single battle, over 100 million, is enough to run a department of the Clock Tower for 100 years. Carrying the properties of all the world's evil, fighting them would normally require something to dispel a curse, but a level of energy equal to that making up the shadows can eliminate them. While Rin Tosaka could not hope to destroy a single one normally, the Jeweled Sword of Zelrich allows her to match Sakura's limited output used to create them and destroy them with her infinite energy provided by the second magic.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.